I left speech therapy, I was basically a broken man.
Mm.
I isolated myself from the world. Again, I just became, so enthralled by everything that, again, if I can help enrich another life like mine has since, finding his books and program, then, that's my sole purpose in life.
This wrapped up from my call from today, and he emailed me. You help yourself when you help other people. If even one soul happens to listen to our session and finds encouragement through it, then I did my good deed for the day. If you've been following Save Your Spoon for a while, you know that I used to put in my description at the end of the day, maybe only one person reads this, but as long as it may have an impact on someone, that is all I care about. Individuals that we are. Today, we are talking to Danny. He's going to describe a little bit about his story. He was someone who used to stutter and then found this program that really reshaped the way that he went about the world. I really gravitated towards this program because of my background in neuroscience, the way that I love the fact that you can reshape the way you interact with the world through thoughts, through your feelings, through your actions. He talks a little bit about a negative speech therapy experience that he had, which I was intrigued to hear from, being a speech therapist. And he talks about, too, just how he has found so much salvation in this program. He is now a speech coach and helping a lot of other individuals in the same position. If you are a speech therapist, I highly encourage you to listen to this and check out the program, especially considering an open mind. This is talking about things that we have heard from professors, and it's intriguing to see just a different perspective. On the website, it said that approximately 95% of speech therapists have never stuttered in their life. So having someone who has stuttered is something that I find being necessary to the field, having that input. So hearing that this speech treatment did not work for me, here's what I would tell you as someone who stutters and no longer stutters. So I hope you have some takeaways. Even if you're not a speech therapist or someone who stutters, I think you could find some takeaways, whether you know someone who stutters, whether you have a insecurity that you would like to change. Some people move throughout the world saying, you're going to be like this for the rest of your life. Take it or leave it. Or you can try your best. Try something that you may have never considered before in your life. Try these techniques that he mentioned, such as making yourself say affirmations to the mirror. It might sound silly, but a little can go a long way. And again, he says he had a mild stutter. Blocks are when a person is unable to move their mouth and they use their voice to continue speaking. No voice or sound comes out during that block. So an example would be, I am so tired. So that block, that period of time where that person is trying to use their voice, but they're not able to, that is what we would consider a block, and that's what he refers to when he describes his stuttering experience. Some major takeaways, too, that I want you to keep in mind: just the pre-programming that goes into speech and language, the way that if you can see yourself doing something in one setting, you can program yourself to do in other settings. I think this is so important when it comes to public speaking. And I think it's so important to see the client, see your student, your patient, whoever you're working with, where they are right now. It's so easy to be like, well, I hate to break it to you, I hate to be this person, but this is it. When there are so many success stories where people are getting rid of stuttering. And he says, if you are someone who can't accept and be okay with stuttering, I wish I had the confidence. And this isn't necessarily to have any kind of negative connotations with stuttering, but when you are so isolated that you don't want to communicate, or you have people that don't know that you stutter, that it keeps you, I think it's worth pursuing and considering this alternative approach. So he is going to go more into it, but it's called the World Stop Stuttering Association, WSSA. And he says, as someone who is a PWSS, person who stops stuttering, a little goes a long way when it comes to just allowing. So, to begin, let's get rid of that guilt, shame, embarrassment, and start working towards a path that enlightens you the most. Perfect. So, Danny, if you want to introduce yourself, to the podcast.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Danny. I'm 34 years old. I'm from Connecticut. And, I'm just here today to share my story with stuttering. And, hopefully it will inspire someone out there to know that, stuttering doesn't have to be a life sentence. And if you diligently immerse yourself in this book and program that I'm going to be speaking about in a few, and then you can conquer your stuttering and elevate your life to heights you never thought possible.
I love that introduction. And so the program that Danny's going to speak on really spoke to me as someone with a background in neuroscience, especially when it comes to neuroplasticity and changing the way that you move through this world through your thought patterns. So, Danny, if you want to begin talking a little bit about your experience with stuttering growing up.
Absolutely. For whatever reason, and I know this might shock you, since when I tell a lot of people the age that I started stuttering, they're like, "Oh my God, you started stuttering at that age." But for whatever reason, I started stuttering at age 18, and I know
Okay.
it's a bit late, and I can tell you the exact day, time, location of that event too, because my favorite soccer team actually came overseas to play in end season friendly in the old Giant Stadium, and I remember the players warming up before the game. And I turned to one of my cousins at the time to make a comment about one of the players. And then all of a sudden, I just couldn't get his name out of my mouth. And I felt like I was just trying to force his name for what felt like hours. And, I didn't really think much of it. I thought it was just, a weird coincidence that will hopefully only happen one time in my life. But little did I know that one block led to more blocks, led to 5 blocks, 10 blocks, 15, 20, so on and so forth. And before you know it, I guess I became a situational stutterer with long blocks. And for whatever reason, as I got older in life, I always thought it would fade away. But as I did get older in life, I knew that wasn't the case. And it wasn't until I was 29 years old in which I decided to do something about it, because I just hated playing the mental mind games with myself, trying to start up a conversation with somebody. And already in my head, I was pre planning words. And I know that I couldn't have a conversation with this person or that person because I know for a fact I would stutter on this word and that word. So, I held back a lot. I basically isolated myself a lot. I basically quit college because of,
Yes.
my stuttering hindrance. And, it just took over my life. So it wasn't until I was 29 in which I decided to do something about it. And I thought, who better to go to than a speech therapist? So, I was excited to start my journey with my speech therapist to hopefully find my fluent voice again. But after nearly a year and nearly spending $1,000 on speech therapy, unfortunately, I didn't feel no improvement whatsoever in my speech. Like the person that I went from day one all the way till maybe month 8, because I probably spent around 8 or 9 months of speech therapy. Unfortunately, I didn't receive no benefits whatsoever. And then, I kept telling my therapist this every single week. It's like, I feel like I'm not improving, I'm not getting better. And then, the last time I saw her, she basically stuck the dagger in my heart, if you will, where she told me that, maybe it's better if you stick by your stutter and you stutter proudly. And even though I didn't tell her to her face at the time, in my head, I was like, okay, so what was the point of me coming to you for nearly a year,
A
wasting my
grand
time?
later. A
Yep,
grand later.
wasting my time, wasting your time, and wasting close to $1,000. And now you're telling me that I'm basically going to be a stutterer forever and there's no hope. So afterwards, my mental health definitely took a dive. That's when I didn't want to speak to anyone, not even my own parents, my brother, anybody. And I basically isolated myself from the world. And it got to a breaking point. I remember one night, it was in December 2022. I think it was right before Christmas, because as when Christmas comes around, we spend time with our families and all that. And I was just dreading thinking about going to my aunt and uncle's house because I didn't want to spend another holiday basically isolated in a corner, watching everybody else, talk freely, have a good time. And then you just have me sitting in the corner, feeling sorry for
Yeah.
myself. And in that night, I probably bawled my eyes out for a good 30 to 40 minutes. Like I just had tears just coming out of my eyes for a straight 30 to 40 minutes. And even though, I look back at it and you might think it was a sad night, something great happened that night because it led me to a stuttering page on Reddit. I don't know if you're familiar with the stuttering community on there.
No,
Are
I'm
you?
not, and that would be
Okay,
great,
that's
a great resource, I think, so continue on.
yeah, absolutely. It's a community of stutterers where we go to, help each other, help enliven each other's lives. But I feel like they preach more acceptance, which is totally fine. Like, if you're actually comfortable enough stuttering, like, more power to you. And I wish I could just have like an ounce of your inner confidence because I can never stutter proudly, like how some of these people say. So, more power to you. So, during that night, I remember, seeing the most heartfelt comment from a user basically saying how he or she stopped their stuttering through a book. So naturally, that piqued my interest. And that's when I direct messaged the user on the side saying, what was that book that helped you stop stuttering? And that's when the user recommended me I read this book. I actually have it right here. How to
Oh,
Stop Stuttering
wow.
Speaking. As you
Love
can see,
speaking.
it's a very
Wow.
big book. Yeah. It's over 700 pages. And I immediately went on Amazon. I bought it. It arrived within a couple days. And I kid you not, I consumed this 700-page book in under 2 to 3 weeks because I was just at my wits' end with stuttering. I
Huh.
wanted it gone from my life completely. And I can honestly say, besides, reading the Bible, this is possibly the best book that I've ever read in my life because, it's written by an ex-stutterer. It basically tells his life with stuttering and how he came up with these brilliant techniques, methods, tools, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And basically, within a certain amount of time, he stopped stuttering thanks to these temporary tools that he used to, help gain a fluency pattern. So that just, inspired me even more. And then I decided to join his WSSA program, which stands for the World Stop Stuttering Association. And the resources on that website is more valuable than anything that my speech therapist ever offered me. Because even though I love my speech therapist to death, like she helped me a lot, but the practices she was placing on me was basically, reading aloud, reading slowly, and especially reading while elongating my words just like that. And, that's just, completely unnatural speech. And then she also hooked me up to a DAF device where, she gives you a pair of headphones and you basically hear your own voice in your head. And while that did help me speak fluently, I hated the way it made me sound because it literally made me talk like this in a robotic tone with no personality or charisma whatsoever. So I just hated that. So, anyways, going back to the book in WSSA. So I finished reading his 700-page book within 2 to 3 weeks. And then
That's
I joined
wonderful.
this amazing WSSA program. And the resources provided there are absolutely amazing. Like he has a bunch of masterclass series in which he goes into more detail on his books about stopping stuttering, beating fear. He literally has thousands and thousands of coaching videos with PWS, which stands for People Who Stutter. And I probably consumed again, probably 200 to 300 videos at this point. And every time I'm watching one of these videos, it feels like you're in your own, personal one-on-one session with a speech therapist yourself. And every little video that I watched, I tried to, find some techniques and apply it to my speech. Because, it's one thing about reading how to, because he calls these things just tools, methods, whatever you want to call it. And these crutches, tools, methods, whatever you want to call it, they're only going to be temporary until you build a fluency pattern. And then once you build a fluency pattern, you won't need any of these crutches anymore. So I always tell people it's one thing to read about a crutch and how to use it and all that, but then there's another thing to watch, the author himself basically demonstrate and how to properly use the crutch. Because at first I thought I was properly using these tools, methods correctly, but after watching so many of his videos, I knew that wasn't the case. So, that's why it was so important that I, consumed around 200 to 300 videos because I learned so much from it. And then he also offers, one-on-one coaching with himself or one of his ex-stuttering students, which I love because all the certified speech coaches on the website are his ex-stuttering students. And I actually became a certified speech coach myself because, I'm so thankful for this program
That
because it
is
helped me stop
excellent.
stuttering.
Yeah.
So if I can help, enrich another life, like my life has become since finding this book and program, then I did my sole purpose for the entire day. And then lastly, he has these weekly SAM meetings, which are held at 12 p.m. noontime. And, it's the only community in the world consisting of ex-stutterers and those fast becoming ex-stutterers. And in the beginning, I can't tell you the amount of, motivation and inspiration that I took from it, because even though I would like to have, at least a story every single week of somebody conquering, their stuttering and how these books and program help, occasionally we do get, some people actually have the bravery and courage to give one of these SAM talks where, they talk about their life of stuttering and how, the program basically helped them stop stuttering. And at first, when I read his book and joined his program, I just wanted to be in and out. I just wanted to consume all the information, hopefully stop my stuttering and get out. But again, I just became, so enthralled by everything that, again, if I can help enrich another life like mine has since, finding his books and program, then, that's my sole purpose in life for right now. And I actually had the bravery and courage myself to give one of these SAM talks. I think it was back in August or September of last year. And at the end of my talk, I had so many people congratulating me on how well I spoke, how they'd even hear a hint of stuttering and all that. And on top of that, because I'm such a strong advocate for WSSA, I actually had the pleasure of going on my favorite radio morning show, which is called Elvis Duran in the Morning Show. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
No, I haven't. That's so cool. Go
Yeah,
continue.
it's a nationally syndicated radio show based in New York. And I remember I called and texted in a few times saying, "Hey, can I talk about how, this book basically helped me stop stuttering?" And then out of the blue, I actually get a call back by one of the producers on the show. And, he said, "Do you mind, going on air and then sharing your experiences with the host?" And I'm like, "Oh, of course." And then I got on air and then I basically told my story, and never in my, wildest dreams that I would ever imagine that I would be on the show one day. And the host himself basically, congratulated me on overcoming the biggest insecurity that I've ever had in my life. And he basically saying how I spoke so well, so confidently and all that. So again, it's just been a wild ride. I never thought that, I would be able to overcome my stuttering, especially after, my traumatic experience with speech therapy. Because as I told you before, my speech therapist basically said, maybe it's better if you stick by your stuttering and all that. So after that, I never thought that I would be able to speak to anyone fluently. And then if you were to ask me a year and a half ago that, one day you'll be going on podcasts, radio shows, and helping other people overcome their stuttering, I would have looked at you like you had two heads, and I would have called you absolutely crazy.
Like you
Exactly.
insisting, like, let me go speak on
Exactly.
another platform, you probably
Exactly.
never fathomed it. So
Yeah. And
you are
then
doing beautiful work. Continue. I keep cutting you
appreciate
off.
it. Yeah. No, no, it's totally fine. It's totally fine. And then, I'll just end off by saying the three keys that got me over stuttering is what the author calls the 1, 2, 3 punch. And if you diligently immerse yourself in the 1, 2, 3 punch as a stutterer, and then within a certain amount of time, you will stop your stuttering. And the first thing you have to do is read aloud for at least 1 hour a day. Because when you read aloud, you're invariably hearing your voice at its best. And I want to say 95% of stutterers are able to, read aloud and speak alone in a room, perfectly fine without stuttering and all that. And that's why it never made any sense to me when I was a PWS, because, I could speak and read fine alone. But then when the moment came that I had to have a conversation with somebody else, that's when, my situational blocking would occur. So, we get there at the start by reading aloud for 1 hour a day, because the more fluency we hear from our lips, the better. And that's why in the early beginning of this program, I was probably reading aloud for 2 to 3 hours a day. And that's exactly why, I finished this 700-page book within 2 to 3 weeks, because, I was putting in 3 hours a day of reading aloud. And then the second thing you want to do is practice and master the crutches. And, these are only going to be temporary tools to help you get by any, stuttering hesitations or fears that you
Yeah.
may have. And, if you do decide to read the book, you'll definitely learn more through it, because, it's an extensive chapter which covers a lot of tools. And then the third thing, and this is what I tell people all the time, like I'm forever thankful for Lee Lovett's books because it helped me stop stuttering. But the greatest thing that I took from it was daily mind training through the use of positive affirmations, because our most repeated thought becomes our dominant thought, and our dominant thought becomes our reality. And like I told you before, after I left speech therapy, I was basically a broken man.
Yeah.
I isolated myself from the world. I would call myself all these horrible things every single day. You know, you're dumb, you're stupid, you won't amount to anything in this world. No company would ever hire you because you don't know how to talk properly. No girl would ever date you because you don't know how to talk
Yeah.
properly. And, you know, the more times you call yourself dumb and stupid, you are eventually going to become that. And, you know, thanks to these affirmations, now I can even tell you the last negative thought that I had about me or my speech. And it's all thanks to these affirmations. And at first, they're all going to be related to speech. It's basically going to be a list of 10 affirmations, all related to speech. And you want to do daily mind training twice a day. So you're going to say these affirmations, one in the morning and then one at night. And you want to repeat each affirmation 20 times. And then at first, you know, I was just doing these affirmations because that's what the author suggested in his book. Like some of the affirmations were, in every way and in every day, my speech grows better and better. When I speak, calm floods my body. I love to speak to strangers, groups, and authority figures. And, you know, at first I was just saying it because that's what the author
Yeah.
suggested in his book. But because I kept saying it every single day, twice a day, after a certain amount of time, I started to believe what I was saying. And I started to get into these affirmations more and more. Like I started to say them with more passion in my voice. And if you don't mind, I'm going to tell you a short story
I
of
love
how these,
this.
yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
A short story of how, you know, I knew this program and the affirmations were working in my life. Basically, my last bad speech incident occurred in a grocery store. I remember I was grocery shopping with my father, and then he told me to go to the deli department to order some condiments. And when I was, you know, waiting in line for my number to be called, I already, you know, was in a panic, anxiety state. I, you know, was already pre-planning words. I was already saying, you know, I know I'm going to stutter on American. I know I'm going to stutter on cheese. I know I'm going to stutter on buffalo chicken, so on and so forth. And then when my number got called, I basically, you know, blocked on all those words. And then, you know, probably 2 or 3 months into this program, I went back to that same deli department. And this time, you know, I wasn't really fearful like I was the last time. Like last time, I was probably 95% scared. But this time, I would say maybe 5%. And instead of, you know, pre-planning words, thinking that I'm going to start on this word and that word, I basically kept repeating an affirmation in my head over and over again until my number was called. And I kept saying, I trust my mind to choose my words and not plan them.
That is
I trust
beautiful.
my mind to choose my words and not plan them. And then when my number got called, I basically ordered everything that I wanted. I probably only used a crutch or a tool method, whatever you want to call it, once to say the word American. And I said everything in a nice fluent speech. And then afterwards, you know, it was just like a huge win for me. It's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
you know, this program is working. It's already, you know, provided me with more benefits than my speech therapist ever did. And, you know, that's why I became such a strong advocate because, you know, going back to the Reddit community page, sometimes, you know, I see all these heartfelt posts of people basically saying how the stuttering is such a hindrance to them. And some of them are, you know, unfortunately suicidal and thinking of taking their own life because, you know, the stuttering thing is such a hindrance to them. So you know, do my best to reach out to them. And while I was never suicidal at all, because, you know, I feel like when we leave this earth, it's going to be on God's terms, not ours. But there, you know,
Yeah.
there were a few times where, you know, I would cry at night saying, you know, God, if you want to take me from this world, please do it right now. But, you know, thankfully, I don't think that way anymore. And thankfully, you know, God did not call my number because now my sole purpose in life is to help as many stutterers out there. And I basically, you know, tell them my story, how this book and program basically saved my life from self-destruction. And if you diligently immerse yourself in all of the Levitt's methods, and then, you know, one day you also stop your stuttering, and then hopefully you'll elevate your life to new heights through, you know, daily mind training through the use of positive affirmations.
No, thank you. I want to say I greatly appreciate just your ability to like share what you went through. It's not easy. And for me, in my opinion, communication is so key when it comes to your identity. It's who you are. And that's what really intrigued me because, for one, Lee's program, if you look on the website, and I'll link it in the show notes, it is available to speech therapists. And I encourage other speech therapists to look it up and utilize the resources. But when I think of my students, I always consider where they are in that moment. I think mental health is such, it could be a barrier to really incorporating the tools. And what stood out to me a lot, one, I had a really bad concussion, a brain injury, which sometimes if I'm really sleepy, I'll misplace words. I'm the
Mhm.
worst speech therapist. And so I resonate with you, especially when it comes to those daily affirmations. I speak with confidence. I portray myself to the best abilities and just making sure that what I want to say, I say it in a way that aligns with my best self.
Mhm.
And that's where stuttering, I think, like you said, become a hindrance.
Yep. Very true. Very true.
So when you're working with any kind of students as a speech therapist, what would you recommend us? How would we go about the day-to-day practices to influence our students?
Yeah, that's definitely a good question. That's why, I fully recommend all speech therapists out there to definitely check out, the World Stop Stuttering Association. You can find it at worldstopstuttering.org, and it's absolutely free to all speech therapists. And, I definitely recommend incorporating the 1, 2, 3 punch, as I explained before, reading aloud, practicing the tools and crutches, and especially doing daily mind training through the use of positive affirmations. And, I don't want to say all speech therapists have the same practice, but because I'm always on Reddit and I see a lot of people basically explain their experiences with speech therapy, it seems like all they do is, have their clients basically, read aloud, hook them up to that DAF device where they hear their own voice in their head, and then practice, reading slowly and elongating their words. And I feel like, that's not really helpful to the client or the student, whatever you want to call it. I definitely think that, you should definitely change up your practices. And I feel like if you just take the time to, search WSSA and all amazing resources and, try to, copy some of their resources into your own practices. And then I think it could be beneficial to your practice as well as helping all your clients and students.
Can you tell us again how it felt when your speech therapist told you, let's work on stuttering acceptance? Because that's something that we have heard in our studies, and
Right.
that's something that can have an adverse effect, especially on a developing child, someone in young adulthood.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. I really never really revealed to anyone that I stuttered before because in my case, I was a mild situational stutterer. Like not a lot of people knew that I stuttered because I hid it really well. And I feel like the only person that knew that I stuttered a bit was my own brother because that's possibly the only like closest person that I'm really close to that I tell everything to. And, my own parents didn't even know that I stuttered. Like I
Oh,
remember telling them that, I'm gonna attend speech therapy. And they just looked at each other saying, why would you go to speech therapy? We never heard you stutter once. And, it's because I held back a lot. I didn't really have to talk until I really needed to talk. And one of the things that my speech therapist said that, maybe you should tell other people that you stutter. Like maybe it will give a weight off your shoulders. And again, who better to listen to speech than a
your
speech
speech
therapist?
teacher.
And then I felt like when I started to open up to more people about my stuttering, I felt like it compounded my stuttering and it made my speech even worse because
Yeah.
now I self-consciously thought like every conversation that I had, I was always thinking, oh my God, now they know that I stutter and now they know that I'm probably going to block on this word and that word. And I say, unless you're fully comfortable with, close confidence, I really wouldn't recommend you opening up to a lot of people about
Yeah.
your stuttering. Just let your speech speak for itself. And, that's really all that I got to say about that.
Yeah. No, and to follow up that question, when we're looking at just rewiring the brain, using our thoughts, using our words, I feel like that has to have a adverse effect telling yourself and people, I'm someone who stutters. And the way that you are already anticipating using different words aligns with someone who stutters, who is a PWS. So it's so enlightening to hear that Lee took the time to actually carve out, let's rewire deeper than
Mm.
just using these band-aids. Can you give an example of a crutch? I know
Oh,
too, we want to make
yeah.
sure that we're keeping it in the program. look
Like,
up the
yeah, no,
website, but I would love to hear one.
absolutely, absolutely. Basically, there's a list of 13 crutches, and I'm going to start off, just naming them and then giving like a brief explanation of each crutch. The first one is to simply omit the first letter or syllable of a word. And in the beginning of this program, that crutch really worked like a charm because, as stutterers, we're always fixated on that one word, that one syllable. Like, for example, for whatever reason, I couldn't say the name of my favorite soccer team, and their name is called Benfica. And I always get stuck on the but part. Like for whatever reason, I knew that I would hard block on the B. So if you simply just drop the B and say my favorite team is Benfica and keep right on talking, no one is going to notice that you basically dropped the B in
Okay.
Benfica, kept right on talking. So that one was definitely a big help to me at the time. The second one is to find a similar word or synonym. And as a stutterer back then, this is something that I did a lot because, I was basically, changing words up because I knew I was going to stutter on this one. So I would
A lot of
simply,
kids do that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I would simply, do a quick change. So that's one. The third one is to spell the word or skip it. And this works great with names because as stutterers, I feel like a lot of us stutter when we have to say our name. So, for example, if I just have a feeling that I'm going to stutter on saying my first name, Danny, I would basically start to spell it Danny. And then when you're spelling it, you're basically, breaking the block. And then once you finish spelling it, you're able to say your name. And that is something that I probably used maybe once or twice in the past. And I felt like every time that I spelled my name, was already breaking the block. And then after I spelled it, I was able to say my name. The fourth one is definitely the second most popular one, and it's to insert a word or sound and jam it into the feared word. So,
Okay.
for example, going back to my feared word, which was Benfica, if you just use a word or a sound and jam it into the word Benfica, you won't stutter at all. And unless you break, no, you have to hold your tone or you have to hold the sound and jam it into the word. And if you break the sound, and then you're unfortunately gonna, stutter on a word, repeat it or force it. So for example, I'm gonna use crutch number 4 while saying Benfica. My favorite team is Benfica. So
Okay.
yes, basically you want to hold that tone, link it into the feared word, and if you do it properly and effectively, you won't stutter at all. The fifth one, unbeknownst to me at the time, is something that I did a lot, and it's to tell a story about the feared word. So again, going back
Oh,
to
wow.
Benfica, since I
Sure.
am a soccer fan, I would get into a lot of conversations with other people, and then they would always tell me, "Oh, so who is your favorite soccer team?" And already in my mind, I want to say it, but I know that I'm going to block on the B in Benfica. So I would basically, start telling the story like, oh, they're the biggest team from Portugal. They had the most national titles. They were the first Portuguese team to win the Champions League and all
Awesome.
that. And then afterwards, I give them so many hints, and that's when they say, "Oh, so your favorite team is Benfica from Portugal." And once they say that, it was a huge relief off my shoulders, and I'm like, "Thank God that you were able to say it because I know if I had to say it, I would definitely block on it." So that is definitely something that I did a lot. The sixth one is to change or rephrase the thought, and again, unbeknownst to me, that is something that I did a lot. The seventh one, and this is really, really good for the most severe stutterers out there, and it's to simply whisper. Because when we whisper, we're basically leaving our normal voice register. Our anxiety levels are dropping, our blood pressure is dropping. And then, if you properly talk in a whisper, you won't stutter at all. And I specifically remember an African woman coming into, one of those SAM meetings that I was talking about, how the author has every Saturday. And she actually had the bravery and courage to speak up when she first attended the SAM meeting. And she was a very fast word repeater. And then she started working with the author, and he told her basically, for the next week or two, I want you to talk in a whisper to help develop a fluency pattern. And then just to see, her progression from there until now, because I think it was probably a month or two ago, she actually gave a SAM talk discussing how she overcomes stuttering. And if you were to watch this speech, you would never know that this woman had a stuttering problem. And she got there, well, she got over it in the beginning by, basically having conversations in a whisper tone. The eighth one is to change, sorry. The eighth one is to change your voice register. So basically going high on words or low on. words. Because
Okay.
when we leave our normal voice register, we always break the block. So for example, going back to my favorite word, Benfica, I can say, my favorite team is Benfica. Now, I don't know if you can tell, but I basically went high when I said Benfica, or I can say my favorite team is Benfica. And now I
Yeah.
went low on it. So as long as you leave your normal voice register, you break the block every single time. The ninth one is extreme pronunciation, which works great for fast talkers because back then I was a very fast talker. But with extreme pronunciation, as I'm demonstrating to you right now, it lets me talk in a nice pace and it lets you understand everything that I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because obviously, if I start talking to you like this, you're not going to absorb all the information that's coming out of my mouth. So, extreme pronunciation is a good one. The 10th one is word linkage. And again, this is a very good one for the most severe cases out there. It's basically holding your tone, kind of like you're singing in a bit and making, 1 to 3 words, one whole word. So, for example, instead of saying, how are you want to get the how are you and make it one word while holding a tone. So you say, how are you? Where are
Oh,
you going?
where are you going? So
Yes,
kind of like the sing song, like
exactly.
rhythm.
Exactly. Yeah. And then as long as you hold your tone throughout, the conversation, you will not stutter at all. Um, the 11th one is to speak like a king or queen, and there's a lot of subparts to it. And I feel like
Love
this,
that.
is- and I feel like this is something that even the most fluent people in the world could use. And it's basically, you talk slowly, you talk softly, you have to be expressive.
Um,
Yeah, you have to use extreme pronunciation, and possibly the best one is use short increments. Short increments is talking between every 1 to 3, 1 to 5, and every 1 to 7 words. And again, in the beginning, this crutch was definitely helpful to me because I'm going to be talking to you right now using short increments. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm basically talking every 1 to 3, 1 to 5, or 1 to 7 words. And going back because I felt like when I was blocking on my words, it was mainly because I was talking way too fast and I would just feel all the air rushing from my throat and getting like caught right in the middle, and that's where a lot of my blockage would occur. But with short increments, it basically allows me to take a pause at anywhere in the sentence and basically catch my breath and lets you the listener absorb everything that I'm saying.
a
That was
lot of
the
great speakers can use that. So
absolutely.
that's a
uh
great one.
yeah, and then the last two, the 12th one is smile. This one was actually given to one of the author's students from India because he says that every time he smiles, he felt that he doesn't stutter out. And this is something that I really didn't, practice a lot, but I feel like when I'm solely focusing on smile while conversating with other people, I feel like I won't stutter at all because instead of, thinking words and pre-planning words and all that, if you just solely focus on smile, you won't stutter. So, this could be a good one for, people out there. And then the 13th one, even though it's not really a crutch, this one is called no crutch at all. And it's basically when you master all the previous 12 crutches that you don't really, need to use them in your speech anymore. And what I'm doing right now is basically using crutch number 13 because I developed a fluency pattern, since I've been in this program for nearly a year and a half. And now I feel like, I really don't need any of the crutches to help me get by any, stuttering hesitations.
No, thank you for sharing those. And I think it's enlightening. I see a lot of overlap between some of what we've learned in our stuttering courses, as well as some of what we've like learned in our public speaking, even kind of in that realm of affirmation, presenting yourself with confidence. For me, I know whenever I get really nervous, I talk so quickly. I go a mile per minute. And
Likewise.
right. And then using the tools to smile, look big. And one that I really like that you mentioned, the whispering. I really find that when you channel different parts of your nervous system, that can help soothe any kind of stuttering. I'm not sure if Lee's talked about that, but tension.
He has, yes,
So, again, another reason to check him out.
definitely.
Do you have any words that you would give to someone who doesn't know much about stuttering or how their understanding of stuttering should change from what it was initially to what we're finding out now?
Are you talking about a person that currently stutters or just people in general?
People in general.
People in general. Okay. I feel like if this was pertaining to stutterers, I'd probably answer it for you better. But I guess to people in general, I would say, be kind and patient with, stutterers out there because I feel like stuttering is probably the only disability out there that, still currently gets made fun of, because of ignorance or whatever they're doing on purpose. So I would definitely say, be kind to a stutterer because, because not everybody, can speak fluently like, 85% of the world or whatever have you. And I don't know if you know, but in terms of stutterers, there is exactly 70 to 80 million of us out there. That makes up, 1% of the world's global population, which is, absolutely crazy to think about. Only 1% of the world's entire population. So yeah, that's my stance on the matter.
And I also think about people who haven't even come out to talk about stuttering as like you have hid it for so long,
Yep.
as well as there are probably so many people who do have a fear. I know I have a close friend who has social anxiety and they're afraid to talk to people. And so they might not even be a part of that 1% technically, but then they are. There might be more people than we know out there.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Because having a stutter is one thing, but then having speech anxiety is a completely
Oh, yeah.
different thing. And then if you had all of Lee Lovett's books, but he actually wrote a book from speech anxiety to public speaking, and that is absolutely perfect for all the mild speech anxiety people out there.
That's
Yeah,
excellent.
yeah.
I will have to check that out for sure. All right. I cannot thank you enough for sharing your story. I had questions that you had already answered, especially attributing to the program. I think this was an excellent opportunity, especially my interest in neuroscience, as well as just how we can reprogram the mind
Exactly,
to get the outcome that we want.
exactly,
I
exactly.
I'm very interested to see how this will change my goals for students that I see. I know
Mm,
previously there was one student who had goals about just fluency acceptance. And again, he might be one of those students that is okay and can confidently do it, but getting to the root cause and just seeing how hearing your fluent voice can go a long way and working towards that end goal, it can really change the course of someone's life.
Yep, absolutely. Well said.
So, do you have any last words for us?
No, well, I guess I'll just end off by saying, if you're currently a stutterer out there, hopefully you found, some encouragement in my own personal story. And then, if you want to change your stuttering ways, then, I highly, fully recommend you check out Lee Lovett's books and his amazing World Stop Stuttering Association program.
This episode, they have weekly meetings. I'll link it in the show notes at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturdays. And then you can look up Danny. I'll put his Gmail in there. He's also on the website that will be linked. So feel free to contact him if you want more information or if you're interested in pursuing any kind of services. Again, speech therapists can join for free and are highly encouraged. I think this field is ever changing and we need a fresh perspective because some things ain't just sticking like they used to. I hope you have a good one and I'll see you next time.